Well, good afternoon, councillors, and welcome to our Zoom meeting of the 26th of May 2020. The time is now 12:32 p.m. Start with a prayer. Almighty God, we humbly ask you to grant your blessing upon this council. Direct and prosper our deliberations to the advancement of your glory and the true welfare of the people of our Shire and Australia. Amen.
Mm-hmm.
And the acknowledgement of country, the Yarrallah Shire Council recognises the traditional custodians of the land on which this meeting is being held, and we acknowledge Aboriginal elders both past and present, and we pay respect to them and their heritage. And council, just again a reminder that today's council meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube. So we have no apologies or requests for leave of absence by councillors. We have no disclosures or declarations of interest. So councillors, moving on to our confirmation of minutes from our last meeting, the last council meeting held on the 5th of May. Councillor O'Connor.
Mr Mayor, I'd move it with one exception. I've advised of a change I require and Bethany has put it into the minutes.
That'll be coming up right now on our screen. So Councillor O'Connor, you want to move those minutes?
Yes.
And a seconder, please. Councillor Toomey, thank you. So with that amendment, Councillor O'Connor, we have moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Toomey. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you. So councillors, we now have minutes to receive and note from the New England JA meeting on the 6th of April and minutes from the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee held on the 25th of February. Are councillors happy to move both of those concurrently?
Happy to move that, Mr Mayor.
Moved Councillor Ledger and seconded Councillor Strutt. Councillor Ledger, any comments?
It's good to see the joint organisation waste reduction and recycling on the top of the agenda and moving forward with the new way in which they're implementing their programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Strutt. Thank you. Nothing further, Councillor Ledger?
No, thank you.
Thank you. So councillors, for the 2 minutes of the New England JA meeting on the 6th of April and the minutes from the Audit, Risk and Improvement Committee meeting, we have moved by Councillor Ledger, seconded by Councillor Strutt. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare those minutes carried. Thank you. We have no urgent, supplementary or related items of business. Councillors, I thank you. The delegates' reports have been tabled and will be up on the screen. We have no mayoral minute. So councillors, I'm now seeking to have some agenda items dealt with in bulk by exception as per section 13 in Council's Code of Meeting Policy. I will now read and call through the agenda items of the reports to council to be adopted by exception and ask councillors to identify any individual item of business listed that councillors intend to vote against the recommendation as recorded in the business paper or they wish to speak on. So councillors, I'll now go through the agenda item. Report number 1, cash at bank and investments. Councillor O'Connor, thank you. Report number 2, the 2019-2020 third quarter budget review statements. Councillor Crouch, thank you. The New England Joint Organisation Draft Operational Plan 2020-2021.
Mr Mayor, I have a question. I'm confused as to whether or not we're voting to include them in the consent or pull them out from the consent. So I voted first one for it to be in the consent. I think it was interpreted the other way.
Yeah. So one is in consent.
So number 1 is in consent, just for clarification. Number 2 is by Councillor Crouch to pull out.
To discuss.
Sorry, to discuss. Report through the Newlangan JO operational plan. Councillor O'Connor.
To discuss.
Report number 4, the 2019-2020 operational plan, third quarter. Councillor Toomey. Report 5, the schedule of actions as at 26 May 2020. Councillor Toomey. The AR Blewett Memorial Award. Councillor Bell. Sorry, Councillor Bell, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that. Item 6, I have an alternate recommendation that I forwarded to the General Manager and to the councillors.
Thank
For
you.
item 6.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr Mayor, and I wish to make a comment about that one as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Report number 7, the works progress report as at 30 April 2020. Councillor O'Connor. Report number 8, the asset management status report. No. Councillor O'Connor.
To discuss.
Thank you. Report number 9, the Kentucky Creek Dam Safety Plan. No.
Mr Mayor, I just have a question on that one, not a change of the recommendation, but I do have a question on that one.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, so I'll just clarify with the General Manager. Only item 1 is in bulk, the cash at bank and investment. So can I have a mover and seconder, please, for item 1? Councillor Sampson.
I'm going to second
Yes,
that.
certainly.
Sorry.
Second that, Mr Mayor.
Moved Councillor Sampson, seconded by Councillor Ledger. There's been no discussion, so I'll put that motion. All those in favour, raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you. So, councillors, we now have item 2, report number 2, the 2019-2020 third quarter budget review statements on page 34.
Mr Mayor. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, just hang on for a sec, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Crouch.
Oh, I believe Councillor O'Connor has some questions that will probably cover what my queries were.
Do you want him to go first, and is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor. You're just on mute, Councillor O'Connor.
Mr Mayor, I have put in a request to have items number 7 to 9 move forward in the agenda before report number 2. And I provided a copy of my procedural motion that in council in order, the council changed the order of business in item 10 reports to discuss report 7 works progress report as at the 30th of April 2020, report 8 asset management plans status report, and report 9 Kentucky Creek Dam Safety Plan between reports 1 and 2 as information contained and responses to questions arising from the reports may further assist council in discussing reports 2, which is the 2019-20 third quarter budget review statements, and report 4, which is the 2019-20 operational plan third quarter progress report.
Okay, just for clarification, for my clarification and the clarification of councillors, you wish to hear reports number 7, 8 and 9 before you want to discuss report number 2, is that correct?
That's correct, Mr Mayor.
So being a procedural motion, we need to move the agenda item. So Councillor O'Connor, you're happy to move those items be heard prior to report number 2. Is there a seconder for that? Councillor Toomey, thank you. So councillors, and I apologise, Bethany, moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Toomey to hear item report number 7, 8 and 9 prior to report number 2, which we're currently on. So I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you. So, Councillor O'Connor, over to you. Report number 7.
Report number 7. Oh, sorry. Yep.
You're just on mute again, Councillor O'Connor. You're on mute.
No, I thought
Sorry, you're just on mute again. You have to repress the button.
that way. Sorry, it's showing the opposite way on my icon.
You're right. You're on.
Okay. In relation to project Hill Street between Bridge Street and Duke Street, I understand they do not agree with the allocation of the portion of the additional roads to recovery funds of $298,053 to this project. Where is the 154,000 funding to come through from Hill Street overlay? And in relation to the report 6, sorry, that's another question. It's really about the Hill Street between Bridge Street and Duke Street, about the funding for it.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Through the General Manager, I'll ask our CFO, Mr. Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, there were some reallocations of the financial assistance grant and roads to recovery between various categories of the Transport Asset Management Plan, although all of the funding is still being spent on roads, and equally all of the expenditure is as noted. So I tried to put a summary of the adjustments into the quarterly budget review, and you will see on page 35 of the business paper, item 3. I'll just wait for people to get that page up. So item 3, roads to recovery, indicates that we received an additional $596,000 in roads to recovery, which was to be spent over 2 years. So we had to spend the money, and the roads to recovery have been urging us to get projects into the system to ensure that that money is either spent or is in the process of being spent. In the summary that I provided on page 35, you will see that initially the roads to recovery income was allocated entirely to sealed rural roads, with the financial assistance grant income allocated between the sealed rural roads and sealed urban streets. The total of those 3 lots of government funding was $1.24 million. And that was originally planned to be spent as to $987,000 on sealed rural roads and $254,000 on sealed urban streets. Now, at the time that the budget was prepared, and you've got to remember that the budgets are being prepared about February or March, there was likelihood that Gilmore Place and another road was in the program, but in fact those 2 roads were completed in the 18-19 year. So there was in fact $190,000 available to be spent on urban rural roads. You would also know that that money plus some minor overrun was spent on John Street. Now that funding came out of the roads to recovery money. It was a project that was put into the roads to recovery by our works manager. So I revised the allocations of the funding as noted on page 35 again, including the additional $298,000, which is half of the additional roads to recovery money that was provided by the government, which is now split as to 400,000 for sealed rural roads. So that was a reduction of 195,000. Why did we do that? So that we had sufficient money to spend on the projects that we identified needed to be completed under the program set out by the Infrastructure and Development. There was 373,000 of the roads to recovery money allocated to sealed urban streets and 120,000 unsealed rural roads. Now you'll know again that the council passed a resolution for the sealing of Mount Mitchell Road, and the costs in that report were $108,000. Our manager of works actually applied for 120,000 under the roads to recovery on the assumption, I think, that he wanted to put in a buffer just in case the costs exceeded the original anticipated amount of 108. So if that doesn't come into 120,000, that rural roads money, that roads to recovery money will have to be reallocated to another department. So that gave a total income of $1.539 million, which is a 298,000 increase, all noted on page 35. And the split of that money was 791,000 to be spent on sealed rural roads, as I noted above, a reduction of 196,000, increase in sealed urban streets from 254,000 to 628, and unsealed rural roads, which is the Mount Mitchell sealing, of $120,000. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Councillor O'Connor, but I thought that the information contained there is clear as to the reallocations in order to fund the expenditure as determined by Infrastructure and Development based on on-ground review of road conditions and works that should be undertaken.
Thank you, Mr. CFO. Councillor O'Connor.
Mr Mayor, that explanation is as put on page 35, which is attached to the budget review. However, what the CFO has explained is the movement of the money around and how it's appropriated. I don't question that at all. The question that rises from the discussion is when did the council provide the authority for those works? And that's the question that arises. And it still is a question that isn't answered. I have no problem with the actual amounts that are moved. I have some questions about the nuances in relation to the financial assistance grants. However, that's not the question. The question is, when were these works approved by council? And that's why I'm asking the question, and that it's sufficient now to go forward with the officer's recommendation for report number 7. And I would move the report of the officer's recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. And just through the General Manager, Mr. CFO, you have a comment?
Perhaps in response to Councillor O'Connor, I'd like to provide some information which I actually emailed to councillors. That is to say, I think that the expenditure has already been approved by council. It's been common practice for council to adopt a transport program with the expectation that a certain amount of money would be spent on transport infrastructure. Indeed, there are many past examples of considerable variations within the transport divisions that have not been reported to council because the overall program cost has not been exceeded. What's clear in current council reports is that there is far more detail on project and departmental expenditure than there has been in the past. Whilst there are recommended budget changes in the quarterly budget review statement number 3 between transport departments, the overall program cost has not been exceeded, except where there has been additional funding to support the increased cost. So it is therefore, in my view, that council has approved the expenditure, the transport expenditure, when it adopted the budget in June of last year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr CFO. Councillor O'Connor, just previously to the Councillor Bell, Councillor Bell.
I find that explanation unacceptable, Mr Mayor, given that as of the 5th of May, we had a report on the Roads to Recovery funding program. The applications have been made for Lease Road, Mount Mitchell Road, and council approved those. How is it that one day later we're doing work in Hill Street with no advice on when the Roads to Recovery application was made? If we're going to expect this level of advice, then we should continue to expect that level of advice. My other concern clearly is that we look to split the FAGs and the Roads to Recovery funding. I'm concerned that that was only to make sure that we didn't need to tender the options and have that report back to council. So I guess I find that the explanation is in contrast to the as opposed to what was resolved after the Mount Mitchell fiasco, and I thought we might have been able to move forward with a reasonable amount of advice to councillors and the community on what was happening. I'd go back to the original traffic management plan. Hill Street wasn't the top of that list, Bly Avenue was. I also note with frustration, but we approved it, the Lease Road section that's been upgraded under the Transport Management Plan. We actually looked at upgrading the gravel section from unsealed to sealed. So again, there's some frustration around the use of the plan and the expenditure. And as I say, it was only 21 days ago we adopted the works progress and planning. It didn't get a mention in the council business and the newsletter. So I just wonder, you know, if we're going to keep ourselves informed, then we should be informed in all those issues. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll just hand over to the Acting General Manager for a comment.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Councillors, only to say that the advice of the CEO is the council administration advice. That is my advice. Councillors, I suggest that if there is ongoing concern or confusion about the program, that we schedule a workshop for that to be further dealt with. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Acting. So, Councillor O'Connor, getting back to you, did you mention before you were happy to move report number 7?
I'm happy to move report number 7 as written.
Thank you. And Councillor Toomey, you happy to second?
Happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
With a comment, Mr Mayor, yes, please.
Go ahead, Councillor Toomey.
Sorry, you're breaking up there, Mr Mayor.
Sorry, can you go ahead, please, Councillor?
Yes. Thank you. I think the workshop is and the advice has to be up to date for us to be able to present to the community what's happening. It was not particularly helpful to be in a meeting one day and then come out and find a project that we knew nothing about was on the very next day. So I think the advice, I think Councillor Bell's point is well made. We have to be informed, and we have to be, if we're going to not abide by the schedule in our own asset management plan, we need to be transparent about why those changes are being made and inform those residents accordingly. I'd also just observe that unless it's been changed by the General Manager, there seems to still be the description of Mount Mitchell $297,000 as drainage improvement when it's actually a full seal. So just again, raise that as I did at the last meeting. Thank you, Mr Mayor. Happy to second it, but with those observations.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor, your right of reply.
None needed, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. So, Councillor, just for clarification and probably for clarification of the video audience, we're looking at report number 7, which is the Works Progress Report as at 30 April 2020. We have moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Toomey. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you. Now we're heading up to report number 8.
Mr Mayor, I would move it, but I have some comments and questions. I am concerned that the building management plan, the building asset management plan is not scheduled to be reviewed until 22-23. This is not only not within this operational plan period of 1920, the delivery program of 1721, or the extended term of this council, which is up to September 2020. I do not see how the green lights, sorry, the reason I'm bringing this forward is because at report number 4, we will be discussing the operational plan for 1920, and I think it's important that this matter was brought beforehand. So I wanted to, the report clearly shows that all of the asset management plans are scheduled for periods 2021 through to 2022-23, and I think we need, we need to express our concerns about that delay. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there a seconder for that?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Strutt, your comment, if any. You're on mute, Councillor Strutt.
Right. No, I have nothing to add. It's just, I just appreciate the report and commend receiving and noting the asset management policy.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor, any right of reply?
No, Mr Mayor, but for the audience's view, what I'm moving is that council receive and note the asset management policy, strategy and plans status update. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you. So, Councillor, moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Strutt. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you. Report number 9. Councillor Bell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm happy to move the recommendation. I have 2 questions though about who is the suitably qualified consultant we've appointed, and what's the expected cost of that process. And I would raise that in future, I would hope that that's something that the New England Joint Organisation might look at doing with other councils that have similar requirements under the safety. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Through the General Manager to our Mr Director, Mr Seymour, can you answer that question, please?
Yeah, look, I'll have to take that on notice. I don't have that information to hand just at the moment, but I think, well, I won't say what I think. I'll send an update out with the bulletin with that information.
Thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr Mayor. I appreciate that.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Mr Mayor, similar to Councillor Bell, but I would expand the question so that the Director of Infrastructure and Development could expand the answer. I asked the question as to whether or not only the joint organisation of council, but was overtures made to other councils in a similar position to us to share a consultant for the benefit of our community. Thank you.
Thank you.
With that, I would second the motion.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. So, councillors, we have moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor O'Connor. I'll put that motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you. So we've done report 7, 8, and 9. So we're back to report number 2. And Councillor Crouch, you're up. Thank you. Councillor Crouch.
My apologies. My main question on this has been answered by Councillor O'Connor's query on report 7. I was curious as to why the need to transfer this expenditure that's known for some time before the expenditure actually happens, comes to council regularly after the expenditure has occurred. But I think we will work through that in a workshop, so we'll let that one go at the moment.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor.
Mr Mayor, I have an alternative motion. In the place of the staff recommendation, I move that Council 1 receive and note the third quarter budget review summary for the 2019-20 financial year as prepared by the Council's Chief Financial Officer. 2, note that Council's projected financial position at the 30th of June 2020 is likely to be satisfactory at year end, having regard to the projected estimates of income and expenditure and the original budgeted income and expenditure, as well as the requested budget adjustments outlined in the report. And
Councillor O'Connor, just before you continue, have you emailed this?
I have, Mr. Mayor.
No? Okay, thank you.
And 3, refer the report to a meeting of the Council's Budget and Review and Finance Committee for detailed examination of the budget adjustments and the capital expenditure authorisation necessary to comply with Local Government General Regulations Clause 211.
Thank you. And just for your information, Councillor O'Connor, that is up on the screen now in red. Can everybody see that from Councillor O'Connor? Councillor Crouch, are you happy with that amendment?
Yes, I'm happy with that. I'm happy to second that.
Well, you actually moved it. Are you happy to move with Councillor O'Connor seconded or vice versa? I'll leave it with you.
Councillor O'Connor has moved that. I'm happy to second it.
Not a problem. So move Councillor O'Connor, seconded Councillor Crouch. I'll put that motion with that amendment. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you. Report number 3, the Joint Organisation New England JO Draft Operational Plan. Councillor O'Connor.
Mr. Mayor, I have only one question and it has been answered. In the budget for the GEO, there was a $150,000 earmarked for capacity building projects. My request was, is this seed funding or does note 6, which wasn't included in the business paper, provide some details? And I've received an email which says that of that 150,000, 75,000 is for strategic transport projects and study currently being completed. $55,000 for the New England Group of Councils for High Country promotion, and $20,000 for the Western Councils for the Greater Artesian Way promotion, which those second two apparently are part of the tourism promotion that was mentioned by Councillor Ledger when moving the adoption of the joint organisation's minutes earlier in the meeting. So I'm happy with that information to move the officer's recommendation that the council receive and note the New England Joint Organisation's draft operational plan 2021 contained in attachment A. With a further comment that I thought that the operational plan is a bit thin on the detail. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Is there a seconder? Councillor Strutt. Any comment, Councillor Strutt? You're on mute. No comment? No comment, thank you. So, Councillor, we have moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Strutt. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you. Report number 4, Councillor Toomey, the 2019-2020 operational plan, third quarter progress report.
Mr. Mayor, I'm wondering if there are a few questions here, if it's worth checking if people want to go into committee first.
I'd say that might be the appropriate course of action, Councillor.
Well, I'll move that we go into committee and see if there's a seconder.
Move Councillor Toomey, seconded Councillor O'Connor. Sorry, Councillor Strutt, I saw you waving, but Councillor O'Connor had his hand up first. So move Councillor Toomey, seconded Councillor O'Connor to move into committee. All those in favour, raise your hand. Thank you. We're in committee mode, Councillor. So Councillor Toomey.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I just had a couple of questions. Page 79 of the business papers. So it's item 2.2.2.1. And I just, it's around the assessment and determination of maintaining sufficient supply of regional, lifestyle, agricultural, commercial and industrial zoned land. I appreciate the response from the Director of Infrastructure and Regulation. I just asked, according to who, how do we assess that, according to who, and how have we validated that? And the Director's response was that he would include an up-to-date assessment in this week's councillor bulletin, but that council as Manager of Development and Planning actually does that work. My only follow-up comment would be, I would hope we would be checking with real estate agencies and assessing against the inquiries that I've certainly passed on about the industrial land. I keep getting feedback there is a gap there and people are keen to take up the industrial land when we get that underway. And if there's an up-to-date assessment, perhaps it could be shared with the community, because these questions come from the community around how we're assessing available land rather than in a councillor bulletin that doesn't get broadcast.
So is that a question now you want answered?
Not answered now, but as I said, it'd be good if we could just share that, the councillor bulletin detail, because that doesn't come to everybody in the community, perhaps as part of an update on how we're assessing that.
Okay.
Would that be possible through you, Mr Mayor?
Thank you.
And on page 80, I just asked about point 2.2.4.1, the item to promote Uralla Shire and the region as a tourism destination. I asked about the specific assets that are being delivered and where and how the community can access them. And I thank the Director of Community and Governance for her answer, paraphrasing a little, but that materials will be available via the website. I realise it's been a big project. I've been doing a little bit of looking into that, and I can see that it's a heavily camping, caravanning, marining and general regional tourism offering. And my concern is that we need to actually refocus as a Uralla Shire offering by understanding our own assets and then working the best way forward to market those. So I would just have to express a concern that the HEMA map system doesn't necessarily best showcase the Uralla Shire's assets, and that we should be thinking carefully about how we're actually doing that. Obviously, I'm aware of the press release from Adam Marshall and some funding in response to another resolution, but that this is certainly something that we need to make sure is relevant for the Uralla Shire, not just for the region. I realise the High Country has a great outdoors focus, that's fine, but the Uralla Shire has a lot more to offer than that. So I thank the Director for her comment, but that's just my thoughts in response to that. Page 84 and 85, I wanted to just raise, and I have, it's around the sewer asset management plan and the water supply asset management plan and the AMP draft documents that are under review. Mr Seymour, I thank him for the response that they're hoping to have them finalised in the next few months. I guess that's something we'll work through in the plan. And I think it'd be really important to get those done. I realise the staff are very aware of that. The second last one, I think, page 89, point 3.3.2.1, which is around the Northern Inland Regional Waste. And thank you, Mr Mayor, for your responses, just explaining a little more about that, confirming that they do have the resources to conduct some community and education work. My only question to you, Mr Mayor, would be, that I've been unable to locate any update on the work NIRW are doing in the Uralla Shire. And the most recent I could find really in email form or in papers was from the 27th of August, 2018. I'm sure there's been lots done. And I wondered if you could, and I do apologise if I haven't found it, but if you could give council an update on the work they're doing with, particularly in the education space, when there are other groups also looking to support the community with some waste education.
Thank you.
Will you be happy to, is that okay, Mr Mayor? You happy to do that?
I'll send it email to the council. As I mentioned to you, Councillor Toomey, in my email, that I was an absentee at the March meeting.
Yes.
It's
a long time between March and August 2018, though. That's what I'm concerned about. I realised that if there was anything in the minutes relevant to Uralla Shire, that you would send that on. So I was concerned that there's been nothing for almost 2 years.
I'll double Councillor
I'll
Toomey.
leave you with that in case I've missed it.
I will double check with that, Councillor Toomey, and
That'd be great.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And then I did ask the Director of Infrastructure and Regulation, or the General Manager passed on my question around the item on page 91, 3.4.1.1 around the water supply, because I was just wondering if any of the work being done was actually going to help with the dirty water experiences in the Uralla Township in particular. And the Director has advised that the modifications do not address iron and manganese removal, and that they are what causes the dirty water issues from time to time in the Uralla and Bundara water supply schemes. So I didn't, my second part of my question to the Director was, if no, have other solutions been identified? And perhaps I'd be grateful if through you, Mr. Mayor, the General Manager, could see if we could get some more advice on that. That part of the question didn't get answered.
You wish to make a comment, Mr. General Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Certainly, yes, we will, councillors.
Thank you. That'd be good. And the only other one was on page 104. I just asked about 4.2.5.1 and the managing of customer complaints and when we might start seeing those as a report to council. And I thank the Director of Community and Governance that she has explained that's one of their priorities. There have been some delays, obviously, with the current crisis, and that they're hoping to have it for the third quarter of the 2021 financial year. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Toomey. Councillor O'Connor.
Mr. Mayor, I have 15 questions and I provided them. Unfortunately, going through the business paper, it took until yesterday morning at 9 o'clock. So I have had a number of answers from both the Chief Financial Officer and the Manager of Suze Glasson. I've forgotten her title. I think it's governance. And two of those relate to report numbers 8, which was the amounts of working on the asset management plans, in which the manager works of water, sewer and waste indicated that the 2.4.2.1, which was the develop and implement asset management plans, which is on page 25 and 26 of the report, or 84 and 85 of the business paper, should be amber. And they were actually green in report number 4. So it's acknowledged that they should be amber, not green. The Manager of Governance also acknowledged that the question in relation to the coordination of the development of a Uralla event toolkit, which is on page 13 of the report, 72 of the business paper, should have been amber. So because of the comments refer to it, but make it look like it should be amber, and the manager, executive manager, agrees that it should be amber. So those 3 should be amber. The other items, with the exception of which one? The question about develop and monitor the annual operation plan, including the budget, which is on page 36 of the report, 95 of the business paper, has a comment on target to be adopted in quarter 4, while under the COVID-19 timetable, the Chief Financial Officer provided as an answer, and also in an email to councillors on the 21st of May, that there's a revised timetable which pushes it through June into July. So I don't see how, if it's got a target to be adopted in quarter 4, that it can actually be done, and therefore a green light should be amber. So with those 4 members, I would be happy to the qualified officer's recommendation that council receive and move the 2019-20 operational plan progress report with alterations from this meeting as at the 31st of March 2020.
Thank you. So we're still in committee, Councillor. So while we're still in committee, does anybody else have a question? If not, we need to move out of committee, resume standing orders. Is there Councillor Strutt?
So
Councillor Strutt, you're still on mute. Hang on, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Strutt's got the chair at the moment, so
Yep, that's fine.
sorry, Mr. Mayor. Unmuted now.
yes, you are.
Good. In the emailed reply to Councillor O'Connor's questions, Councillor O'Connor commented, and I absolutely agree with him, on congratulations to the management and staff of McMaws in maintaining our incredible record of full accreditation, which is very important in the COVID-19 era. And I've asked whether council would write to the manager and staff, recognising the high standard of management that's been administered at McMaw Gardens. There's been no infection, and the management processes have been followed to prevent the infection entering the facility and any spread, I think, are outstanding. I would like to suggest that council writes to the manager and the staff, acknowledging their high standard of service and professional management.
Thank you, Councillor Strutt. The acting general manager has taken that on board now as we speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Connor. Just hang on, Councillor O'Connor. Is there anybody else wants to have a say? No? Councillor O'Connor.
Mr. Mayor, the remaining 11 questions I asked, I would expect that they would be taken on notice and that would be satisfactory.
Thank you, Councillor. If there's nothing further, while we're in committee, please move out of committee to resume standing orders. Councillor Toomey, Councillor
Yes.
O'Connor. So Councillor Toomey, seconded Councillor O'Connor to move out of committee, resume standing orders. All those in favour, please raise your hand. We're back in council mode, councillors. So we're looking at report number 4. Councillor O'Connor, you're happy to move that?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, and I take on board Councillor Strutt's suggestion that we put a dot point which says the performance. Where I just a second. That council adopt. Hang on. That council receive and note the operational plan as I discussed in the committee, and as a second dot point say, congratulate the management and staff of McMaws in maintaining our incredible record of full accreditation. This is so important in the COVID-19 era to protect our valued and vulnerable community members.
Thank you. Councillor Strutt.
Yes.
You're on mute again, Councillor Strutt.
Sorry. And yes, and I'm happy to second that recommendation.
Thank you. So, councillors, we have moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Strutt. We're actually on report number 4, and that extra added sentence was congratulate the management staff of McMaw Gardens, and we'll add the extra conversation. So, as I said, moved by Councillor O'Connor, seconded by Councillor Strutt. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you. Now, report number 5, councillors, the schedule of action.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Should we move into committee again? Will I put the vote and see?
If no questions, I would suggest to do so. So move Councillor Toomey and a seconder, Councillor Crouch. So move Councillor Toomey, seconder. Those in favour, raise your hand. We're in committee. Councillor Toomey.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just really had one question that I have had an answer from the Director of Infrastructure and Regulation. Well, two-part question, but it was around the 17th of December 2019, page 116 of the business papers, resolution 18.12/19. And it was around the review of the top 10 to 20 water users in Uralla and working with them to reduce their water use. It's something I do get asked about a lot, about how this is progressing. I did just ask how it was progressing and how close we are to having a list and what sort of work we'll do to support them. And Mr. Seymour's response was that the council does have a list of the top 10 non-council users and top 10 council sites. And depending on the availability of resources, it's anticipated that council staff will engage with the water users to see if there are practices and measures that could be modified by the user to reduce water consumption. And around point 3 on that resolution, it was about placing information on water usage online in an easily accessible location. Everyone in the community has complimented council on having that information on our website, but I did have a question around how often we update it, having had some questions from the community on that. And Mr. Seymour has advised that ideally it would be updated weekly, but the frequency depends on the availability of critical staff to update, interpret and validate the information and competing priorities. The data that I could see on the 22nd of May when I put the question was from the 30th of April. So I am sure that will be updated when it can be. And the only other 2 items I wanted to note were 2 items missing from the schedule of actions. One was from the 4th of Feb, a notice of motion 3, resolution X11.02/20 around the proactive marketing to recover brand damage. I thank the Director of Community and Governance for putting that back into the schedule until that's completed. And the only other one was from the 25th of February, resolution 46.02/20, report 23, the water update, arsenic treatment progress. I completely accept the Director of Infrastructure and Regulations response that those questions were answered in a weekly bulletin to councillors, but what the resolution called for really was a report to council, because those questions were asked by the community and the community is really looking forward to seeing those answers. And I do get asked about them. I'm not sure that it's, I think it's more helpful if that information just comes straight into council papers and then everyone can access it without feeling that there's any lack of transparency around something so important. And the other thing that I still can't find is the private laboratory or the non-NADA test results, which I can't see them on the website. If I've missed them, I apologise, but I have looked a few times. I can see New South Wales Health, but not the private laboratory test results, which were also requested as part of that resolution. They're the only 2 items. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor. You're still on
For
mute.
me?
Yep.
Okay. My question is similar to, or along the lines that Councillor Toomey just mentioned in relation to the working with 10 major users. My question, which I put in writing to the Acting General Manager, is it planned to identify the 10 major users from the most recent readings or from a combination of past and present usage? My reason for asking that is that with water restrictions in place for a period since the resolution of 1812/19, a comparison of high water users before and during the restrictions could provide useful information about successful reductions in use. In other words, I know very well from my own recording of my usage that we would have been amongst the high end users, and since the restrictions have come in place, we're using less than 70 litres a day each. So I think from looking at success stories, not only that you find out how the restrictions work, but also what did those people put in place to reduce from the very high to the very low, and whether or not those actions are maintainable into the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other questions, councillors, while we're still in committee? Sorry, Councillor O'Connor, I'm I'm confused. Is that a question you want to answer now, or was that a question that you sent in an email and you've got a reply?
This one I sent in the email, which they can act on. The reply is sort of not necessary. All they need to do is take on board it as a suggestion.
Okay, thank you. While we're still in committee, councillors, any further comments while we're still in committee? No. Can someone move us out of committee, please? Resume standing orders. Councillor Toomey, Councillor Sampson. So move Councillor Toomey, second to Councillor Sampson to move out of committee, resume standing orders. All those in favour, raise your hand. So we're back in council mode, councillors. Then looking at report number 5, the schedule of actions. Is there a mover for that report? Councillor Toomey, thank you. And Councillor O'Connor, a second to Councillor Toomey. Any further comments?
No, just that I'd just like to see those 2 items re-included in the schedule of actions. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor O'Connor?
No, Mr. Mayor, I'm fine.
Thank you. So, councillors, we have moved by Councillor Toomey, seconded by Councillor O'Connor. All those in favour, please raise your hand. I declare that carried. Thank you. Report number 6, councillors. Councillor Bell.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was looking to move an alternate recommendation to the officer's recommendation, that council not nominate for the 2020 AR Blewett Award, and 2, that the manager water, sewer and waste be encouraged to prepare a paper on the management of arsenic in the Uralla water supply for the LG New South Wales Water Management Conference to be held the 6th to the 8th of October 2020 in Narrabri. The basis of that is out of that, the Water Association Awards come from that forum. I think that the Blewett Award is an overall council issue rather than a one-off issue. So, but as I say, I'm happy to further discuss it if people wish to debate the issue. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So, Councillor Bell, is it okay with you that the actual term title is it's the manager of waste, water and sewerage services? Can we just adjust that?
Well, sorry, whichever. Sorry, I thought I typed it from the report, but no, okay, yeah, whatever that correct termination.
The manager of waste, water, sewerage.
Manager water, yeah, okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Sorry, Councillor O'Connor, I'll get back to you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Strutt had a hand up first. Councillor Strutt.
Oh,
Councillors, can I just, if we're going to make further comments, more than one comment, we need to do something that we're required to do under the Code of Meeting Practice.
yes, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to move us to committee. I have a comment to make here.
Thank you. So move Councillor Strutt. Second to Councillor Dusting to move into committee. All those in favour, raise your hand. Okay, we're in committee mode, councillors. So Councillor Strutt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe that council is entitled to apply for an award for this particular matter. I think, as I read the report, that the approach to solving the problem has been collaborative. It has been undertaken with a number of other agencies, a multi-agency approach to it. On page 127 with the dot points, I think it makes clear that information and data was really lacking. And I would suspect that from Uralla Council's efforts in resolving this matter, that quite a deal of information which will be useful to other areas and also probably data has been uncovered and can be made available. If the majority of councillors don't agree with applying for the AR Blewett Memorial Award, I would suggest that we apply for the Local Government New South Wales Excellence Awards.
Yep.
I think that this has been a very complex situation that Uralla Council has worked very hard on and hasn't given up on. If the councillors are prepared to nominate for the AR Blewett Memorial Award, then the availability of a scholarship for staff members to undertake further study, I think is a real benefit and would benefit not only the staff and the council, but the Shire itself. So I also agree with Councillor Bell's suggestion that the manager of wastewater and sewer be asked to prepare a paper on the management of the arsenic in the Eurola water supply for the local government New South Wales Water Management Conference, and I would add that as a second dot point. So for myself, I am happy to move the officer's recommendation plus the second dot point from Councillor Bell, but would also accept moving the recommendation to apply for the local government New South Wales local government excellence awards.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, can I make a comment?
Mayor.
Mr. Seymour, yes.
Yeah. Look, I concur with Councillor Bell. I think from my point of view, I think the Blewett isn't quite on the money, but I think the path of going to that conference and presenting a paper and going for awards through the water industry would probably be a more appropriate path.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. Councillor O'Connor, then Councillor Dusting.
Mr. Mayor, I support both Councillor Bell and the comments made by the Director of Infrastructure and Development, mainly because I think we could get better coverage by going to a specific water award rather than the general Blewett Award. I don't know, having sat and discussed and worked out whether or not we had enough in our actions during a year to actually do a Blewett Award during the 2003 to 2014. I found that the Blewett Award is so broad and requires so much work to bring it to fruition. I agree with Councillor Strutt that this is a worthwhile one to go forward with, but I think we should target an appropriate one. And I think starting off with the manager of water, sewerage and waste services, going to a conference is a good start, but I think we should keep ourselves open to industry awards, because I think, as Councillor Strutt said, this is something that we can promote Eurola to other water authorities and increase our standing in that community. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Dustin.
Mr. Mayor, I support both recommendations. However, I prefer the Blewett Award for a simple reason. Number one, for the last 7 months, our council's staff have put up with drought. The drought was extremely hard, making it difficult on our roads, on our gardens. They were taking water, carting it here and there. They were working extremely hard. Then came the fires. That didn't help because of the smoke everywhere. Certain fires around our area and district, we weren't affected quite as badly as other councils, but our staff were still there doing their job above and beyond duty. Then came the arsenic in the water. That's where their really colours came out. They tried everything. They were working hard behind the scenes, and not just the executive staff. I mean, all the workers, the ones that actually turn the stuff with a shovel, the workers that get sweat on their brow. That's what this award is about, is a recognition of the extra effort these people have done in. Now, with the COVID-19 and our change of circumstances and the change of way we performed our duties, the way we do things, I believe there should be some way of recognising the effort our workers have performed during this very difficult period of time. And I think the Blewett Award is the way to go. But that's about all I can say, but that's what I believe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dusting. Are there any other comments, councillors, while we're still in committee? No? Okay, with that, can somebody please move us out of committee, resume standing orders? Councillor Strutt. Councillor Dusting. So move Councillor Strutt, second to Councillor Dusting to move out of committee, resume standing orders. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Thank you. We're back in council mode, councillors.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the officer's recommendation.
I'm happy to second that, Mr Mayor.
So move Councillor Dusting, seconded Councillor Ledger to move the officer's recommendation. Councillor.
Mr Mayor, I'll be moving an alternate recommendation.
Yep, foreshadowed.
Foreshadowed. Thank you, Councillor Dusting.
Sorry.
So Councillor Bell, your amendment, you're happy to move your amendment. Is there a seconder for Councillor Bell's? There was three up. Councillor O'Connor, you were first up. So we're looking at the amended alternate recommendation, moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor O'Connor, that council not nominate for the 2020 AR Blewett Award, and point two, that the manager of wastewater and sewage services be encouraged to prepare a paper on the management of the arsenic in Uralla water supply for the LG New South Wales Water Management Conference to be held on the 6th and 8th of October 2020 in Narrabri. So Councillor Bell, do you have any further comments, Councillor Bell?
Am I off mute, Mr Mayor?
You're off mute.
Yeah, no, I don't have any further comments. Except to say that I worked for council in 1989 when the Uralla Shire won the Blewett Award. And I can suggest to anybody that wants to have a read of the document that was prepared by the then Shire President, that it was a very lengthy and detailed document that covered at least 20 areas where council was at the top of their game rather than a one-off item such as the arsenic in the water supply. So I commend people to have a look at that report that was application that was prepared by Councillor Scott Williams at the time. As I say, I'm concerned that this is a one-off. The other issue I'd raise is that there is still some angst in the community about the arsenic and the treatment of it. And while I agree with Councillor Dusting's comment that the staff have worked tirelessly to support it, there was definitely some frustration expressed by the local member on a couple of areas, one around the testing and one about the ensuring that they had estimates in front of the Minister for Water. So I guess rather than open those wounds up, I'm suggesting an alternate route for council to take. Thank you.
Thank you. So we're looking at the alternate motion, which is up on the screen, which I've just read out, that council not nominate for the 2020 AR Blue Award. We have moved by Councillor Bell, seconded by Councillor Comer. So those, I'll put that motion. All those in favour, raise your hand. Those against? I declare the motion carried. Thank you.
You do it wrong.
The amendment becomes the motion.
Not an amendment. It's a forced motion.
So,
Mr Mayor, I have I question the order that which we've made this. The foreshadow motion would only be put forward.
Councillor O'Connor, with all due respect, I'm actually chairing the meeting, so I'm chairing the meeting the way that I see fit, so thank you.
Okay.
I'll declare that motion carried. And Councillor, can I just thank and acknowledge Councillor Dusting for his suggestion for this report. So thank you, Councillor Dusting. Councillor, now looking at so in report number 10, the decision PA 85-2019.
Mr Mayor, I have an amended recommendation.
Go ahead, councillor Toomey, sorry.
No, I just wanted to highlight that I had an amended recommendation.
That's yours up on the screen now.
Do you want me to read it or is it okay just there?
Yeah. Would you like to read it out, thanks?
Sure, yep. That council defer a decision on development application 85/2019 for additions and alterations to supermarket, new car park, demolition of existing structures at 100 Bridge Street, Uralla, Lot 2, DP 1127831, pending a councillor workshop and the return of council meetings to the council chambers where the community and developer can address councillors on the matters being considered. Thank you.
Thank you, councillor Toomey. Councillor O'Connor. You just on mute, councillor O'Connor.
I second the motion, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. So, councillor Toomey, your right of reply.
I think it's fairly self-explanatory. We've had a lot of discussion, but I feel that there needs to be a really good, robust discussion where we can hear from the manager of planning, hear from the developer, hear from the community, and knit together all of the things that are being raised. Just is something that needs some time for the councillors to come to grips with what the issues are and the way forward.
Thank you. So we have moved by councillor Toomey, seconded by councillor O'Connor. Sorry, councillor Bell, sorry. I was reading one screen and I saw you flashing your hand with the other. So councillor Bell.
Through you, Mr Mayor, I'm supportive of the motion. However, I do raise an issue on page 165. The advice from Transport for New South Wales talks about any proposed work on a classified state road will require the consent. Given that Salisbury Street is not a state road, it's a regional road, I just wonder whether it's appropriate in conjunction with the review of this process that the Uralla Local Traffic Committee also review the alterations that are proposed to Salisbury Street. As I say, it's not dependent on the development, but it will be as an outcome if the development proceeds. So, as I say, I'm concerned that while the Transport for New South Wales has approved their part of it, they're only part of the Uralla Local Traffic Committee, and the regional road should be covered accordingly.
Thank you. I'll just seek some advice through the acting general manager to the manager of planning, Mr. Clarkson. Sorry, Mr. Clarkson, did you hear that comment from councillor Bell?
Yeah, I did. Thank you. Just in reference to that, it's in reference to the classified road because of the developments within 90 metres of the classified road. But the question was whether it should go to the local traffic committee.
Yes.
Yes. Agreed.
Councillor Bell, you've copied that? Thank you. So councillors, just moving on, we have moved by councillor Strutt, were you waving or were you moving a page? Moved by councillor Toomey, seconded by councillor O'Connor. I'll put the motion being a division decision, but we can't stand. So, sorry, councillor O'Connor, did you wish something else?
No, Mr Mayor, I was just voting.
I'll let you know when you put your hand up, councillor O'Connor. So it's moved by councillor Toomey, seconded by councillor O'Connor. I'll put the motion being a division decision. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Nine. I declare that carried. Thank you, councillors. That's unanimous. Thank you. So, councillors, we have no motions on notice. Report number 13. So, councillors, report number 13 is in confidential session, so we intend to move into closed session. And can I thank everybody today for tuning in today's meeting? So, councillors, we need to move into closed session. So, can I have a mover and a seconder, please, to move into closed session? Councillor Sampson, councillor Dusting. So, move councillor Sampson, seconder councillor Dusting to move into closed session. All those in favour, please raise your hand. Okay, councillors, we're in closed session. And thank you, everybody.